In 1969, at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, a quiet milestone took place on this campus. The computing era of the late 60s was heavily restricted. To even touch an IBM System 370 mainframe, you needed institutional access, which meant navigating a closed, highly exclusive academic network. That year, Clarence "Skip" Ellis navigated that network to earn his doctorate in computer science. In our dataset mapping African American scholars, there's a simple note next to his name, the first. A PhD in a highly technical field demands years of close-knit specialized mentorship. Securing that kind of one-on-one guidance is incredibly difficult when you look at the faculty and see zero previous representation. Ellis proved the barrier could be broken, but a single pioneer operating alone cannot build an entire academic community on their own. If we track the PhD graduates immediately following Ellis through the 1970s and 1980s, the timeline remains starkly empty. Across 2 entire decades, we see just 4 more names appear: Monroe, Hughes, York, and Wesley. These men were navigating this vast academic space in near total isolation. Looking closely at this spreadsheet tracking their lineage, there's a column asking if they had an African American advisor. For every early pioneer, there is an unbroken string of ends. This pattern placed a heavy burden on early scholars. People like Marietta Cameron, the first Black woman to earn a CS PhD at UAB, and Jacqueline Jackson at Auburn, had to forge their own paths entirely without Black faculty guidance. They carved out space for themselves on their respective campuses. However, because they were spread out and isolated geographically, their individual successes couldn't immediately trigger a self-replicating pipeline of new students. That slow trickle of graduates holds steady until we hit the year 2000, where the pacing of the data suddenly fractures and accelerates. In that year, Juan E. Gilbert graduated from the University of Cincinnati. Like everyone before him, the advisor column next to his name is marked N. Watch what happens as time moves forward. Gilbert's name transitions from the student column, taking position as an advisor. Almost immediately, the column lights up with Ys. At Auburn and Clemson, Gilbert produces his own PhDs: Wilson, Cross, Williams. One scholar generates dozens. We are looking at a multiplier effect in real time. The exact moment a student gains the credentials to become a teacher, the odds for the next generation compound exponentially. Gilbert's own cluster is impressive, but the data reveals this is a widespread systemic pattern occurring across major engineering institutions. Shifting our focus over to the Georgia Institute of Technology, a parallel network takes root. Here, Ayanna Howard begins advising her own distinct cohort of scholars, steadily adding names like Sekou Remy, Douglas Brooks, and Lonnie Parker to the field. Then, tracing the lines back to Auburn University, we find Cheryl Seals running another high-yield lab, graduating researchers like Justice Nigwensha, Albany Bolton, and Cheryl Swanier. What started as a rigid, mostly empty linear spreadsheet now maps out as a massive interconnected web of academic family trees. When Black scholars secure faculty positions, they recruit, train, and graduate the next wave of talent. Representation stops being a mere statistic and becomes a compounding asset. The momentum builds until we reach the late 2010s. Between 2014 and 2018, the dataset explodes with new graduates, a stark contrast to the vast empty decades following Skip Ellis. To see where this massive new cohort ends up, we have to look at the current employment data tied to each graduate. The pipeline feeds directly into elite, high-stakes environments. We see graduates securing mission-critical government roles, like E. Vincent Cross and Albany Bolton at NASA. But alongside those industry placements is an even more vital metric. A significant percentage of these new PhDs return straight to academia, taking positions at institutions like Spelman, the University of Florida, and the University of Michigan. By returning to the university setting as professors, these graduates form a closed-loop system. They guarantee that the mentorship network will always have fresh nodes, preventing the historical droughts from ever repeating. Looking at the traditional, heavy stone facades of elite academia, it's clear how imposing these structures have always been. The early pioneers were essential because they forced these institutions to acknowledge that a path to the doctorate was possible for Black researchers, even without existing internal support. Yet this data proves that simply admitting diverse students is only half the equation. True equity is achieved when institutions empower diverse mentors to stay and lead. In university terms, this is academic lineage, the passing of knowledge, access, and funding from advisor to advisee. It acts as the invisible engine driving structural change. This record of names and dates serves as mathematical proof of a self-sustaining ecosystem, tracing the direct evolution from a single pioneer to an unstoppable network.